Hello everyone. In this video, we'll talk about few of the important traits of the world's greatest capital allocators. So before we talk about the various traits that these capital allocators possess, we'll first talk about what exactly do we mean by the word capital allocation. And we'll also talk about one of the great books that have been written by William Thorndike, which is called The Outsiders, wherein he has given wherein he has told the stories of eight CEOs who were the greatest capital allocators and how their different approaches to capital allocation has resulted in how the different approaches have resulted in extraordinary remarkable returns for its shareholders. And I think it is and also I've mentioned in most of my videos that it is a must read for people who they are who are interested about investing and all. So I'll just quickly read out the first point that what exactly is capital allocation is. So it is basically a process of deploying a firm's resources. Now again, these resources can be either in the form of capital or it can be in human resource as well. So how is it the process of deploying a firm's resources to obtain best possible returns for its shareholders over a period of time or over a long run? And second point is that, as I mentioned that in his book, William Thorndike has mentioned that for a CEO, there are two things that he needs to ensure that he is doing it, very well. First one is that run the business efficiently, and the second one is deploy the capital generated by those operations. So when I say run the business efficiently, it means that just ensuring that there are no there are no waste getting created in the this thing value stream, and if there are any non-value added activities, then maybe we can weed out those things to ensure that the business runs efficiently. So an example of this would be like DMart. So basically they are a low cost operator. So what basically they have done is they have removed all the unnecessary costs that gets introduced into a system. So they have so all these low cost operators are basically the ones who ensure that the business is being run efficiently. But then and that is what the point number three says, that most of the CEOs they focus on the first point, that is how to ensure that the business is being run efficiently. But then what these greatest CEOs have been focusing on this thing is that the second point of capital allocation is something that should be the CEO's most important job. And so how prudently the capital which a business is generating is getting deployed is something that a CEO should be looking after. And the fifth point is that two companies with similar operating results but then different approaches to capital allocation will produce different outcome for its shareholders. And we'll see how these differences and what is the magnitude of those differences. And that is what I think the last point talks about, is that the CEOs that have been mentioned in the book. So in total, if we take the investment or the track record of these eight CEOs together, and if we try to compare it with their peers, so they have outperformed their peers in terms of shareholder returns by over 7 times. So there's a difference of 7x. And market in general, and again I'm talking about the US equity markets, by around 20x. So they have beaten their competitors or their peers by 7x, and they have beaten the market in general, that is S&P 500, by around 20 times. So that is how these CEOs have been able to produce extraordinary returns for its shareholders, and it is just because of the different approaches they had for deploying the capital. And again, and I think this I've also talked about this particular slide in one of my previous videos. That so if we think of this capital allocation as a process, so what are the various subsystems? So if we take it as a subsystem, then what are the subsystems within the capital allocation process is something that we are going to talk about. And basically it is a toolkit that is available for all these CEOs. And first I'll talk about the left hand diagram, which basically tells you about the capital raising, and the right hand side part talks about the capital deployment. So if I talk about the left hand side, which is capital raising, so it basically says that for a business it is imperative that you should have a capital. So there are three ways of raising capital for a particular business. The first one is the internal accruals, or also called as internal cash flow. So what it means that a business can, let's say for example, if a business is being run very efficiently, then obviously it is going to throw away excess free cash flows to its owners or to its shareholders. So one way of raising a capital is that you tap in the internal cash flow or the cash flow from operations minus if there are any capital expenditures to be done. So whatever free cash flow is remaining, you can put it back to the system or you can put it back to the business. So that is what is the first approach is. Second is you can take a debt or you can issue a debt by by issuing bonds or take or you can take a debt from a bank. So that second point is that you can for raising capital is that you can issue a debt, or third part is raising an equity. So you can dilute your equity or dilute your ownership in a particular business and in turn get capital, which in turn can affect your which can affect which can help you to if there are any growth expansion programs, it can help you to achieve that as well. So broadly, there are three categories for any business for raising a capital. And now if I talk about the capital deployment part, which is the right hand side of this slide. So there are five ways of deploying a capital, broadly speaking. And the first one is again, if a company feels that it has enough runway of growth to runway for growth in times to come, then maybe they can put that external free cash flow back again to the business. So it is also called as organic growth, that if a company is growing by putting money, putting the capital into the back to the business, and if it is growing, so it is like increasing the pie of a business, right? So that is called organic growth. uh, if the company feels that it can grow very fast by acquiring other businesses, so that is called inorganic growth, wherein again the capital would be deployed. So very common example, a very simple example that comes to my mind is the case of Motherson Sumi, which is basically an auto ancillary company which acquires other auto ancillary companies to to get to their target. So that exactly is what they do. So that is called an inorganic growth, wherein you buy other businesses. Third point is you can issue a dividend. So whenever a company feels that it doesn't have much of growth prospects in future, it doesn't have it cannot find a good way of deploying capital either organically or inorganically, then the best part that the company should do, and most of the good companies they usually do it, that they give dividends to its shareholders. And that is what the third point is, that you give dividends to your shareholders. Fourth point is that you pay down a part of debt or pay down the entire debt if at all, if it is feasible. So again, very important, because debt we know is a liability, and during uncertain times, debt is something which drags company into bankruptcy, or debt is something which is very dangerous for a company if it is if the times are not good or times are not conducive for economic growth. And the last part is the share buyback. That if so many companies like in Indian context, we have seen companies like TCS and all, which have been consistently buying back their shares from the open market. So basically these are the five different avenues, or I would say five different ways wherein the capital gets deployed. So basically what these the greatest capital allocators do is they have this entire system in front of them, and which particular aspect of this particular system creates value for its shareholder is something that these guys constantly repeat, and this in turn has been the success mantra for the all these CEOs. And I'll just read out the first point, that capital allocation is investment, and hence as a result, all the CEOs are capital allocators. And in one of the important and one of the famous points that one time when Warren Buffett made was that I am a good CEO because I am a good capital allocator, and I am a good capital allocator because I am a good CEO. So basically, these two things, being a great CEO and being a good capital allocator, they go hand in hand. And this is what the most important role a CEO should have. So coming to the last point, last slide of this, wherein we talk about the different traits which are common, or which are found across these great capital allocators that William Thorndike has mentioned in his book. So basically, what he has written is that what counts in the long run is the increase in per share value, not overall growth, not the profits, not the size. So basically, what he has said there, it is not the pie which matters, or how big the pie is. It is not that. It is that how much the value it has created for its shareholders, measured in terms of returns that it has provided to its shareholders over a long period of time. And just to give you an example, that so basically he mentions in the starting of the book, wherein he talks about a CEO or the greatest capital allocator the world has ever seen is the he profiles the case of Henry Singleton. And he has told, I mean, so basically he tells about Henry Singleton is that how he started a company called Teledyne in 1963, and when he retired as a chairman in 1990. So basically he ran the company for 27 years, and in those 27 years the company generated a CAGR of 21%. So you can see that if for 27 years, if a company is generating consistent returns of more than 20%, just you can imagine. So basically, he said that if you invested when he became the when he was the CEO and when he retired as the CEO, the kind of returns that you would have got is around 180x. And this is the power of compounding, that you invest for future, and if you invest in people you trust and you believe that they're the greatest capital allocators, this is how wealth is being created over a long period of time. Second point, which is common across all these great capital allocators, was that they were all contrarian and they were very much rational in their thinking. So, just to give you again an example, in case of Henry Singleton, that during his time, these all these companies, they were during, and I'm talking about 60s in particular in US, that there was a culture of so there was this culture of conglomerates, which was diversifying into unrelated industries. So if I'm, let's say, if I'm in a if I'm into software and if I want to venture it out into commodity sector like mining or in copper and all. So that is what exactly was happening in US in 60s, when the companies used to venture out in their other industries wherein they didn't had prior experience. So so they were all so and all it was happening across all the industries. But then these capital allocators or these CEOs, they were just contrarian. They were just opposite to what they were doing. And in terms of what Warren Buffett stated, that these were the CEOs who avoided institutional imperative. And what institutional imperative means is that it's a it is analogy to herd mentality of people in stock market. So like if a CEO, if a competitor or a peer of a CEO is diversifying into other businesses, then this particular CEO will also do the same thing, replicating the what others are doing. So all these CEOs, they didn't replicate, and they were the contrarian in nature, and they were very much rational in their thinking. The third point is that they all emphasize cash flow over earnings, and I think now it has become common that we usually so we don't give much preference to earnings part, because we know that earnings and all can be it might misguide us. It can, because it is something which is very easy to manipulate and it can be adjusted. But then now it has become very clear. But then just think about all these things happening in US in 50 years back, somewhere around 60s, 70s. So it was very new at that point of time, and all these CEOs, they focused on cash flow over the earnings. So basically they were talking about the free cash flow, which we know that how much excess cash is available to its shareholders or to its owners. And they were all emphasizing cash flow over earnings, which was at that point of time, and I think now, even now, it is the preferred metric of Mr. Market, or for the market. Then the fourth point is running a decentralized organization with wafer thin staff at headquarters. So basically, what what is the commonality that you will find across all these eight CEOs, that they resisted having plethora of senior vice presidents, MBAs at the headquarters, right? And they gave much power to people who are working at the ground level. So maybe if it is a manufacturing industry, then they used to empower the people who are working in the plant or in the factories that they have, rather than having multitude of these senior executives at the corporate level, because at the headquarters, because they felt that that it doesn't add much value having a lot of CEO, having a lot of these senior vice presidents and MBAs at headquarters. So they run a very so they all these people, they ran a very decentralized organization with minimal staff at headquarters. Also they were so whenever they were getting a chance, whenever they saw any mispricings at the time of any recession, and also they were selective in their acquisitions, and they were also very bold when they were acquiring in this thing or when they were acquiring other businesses. The next point is that they were also very extremely frugal, and they had patience and occasional boldness. So boldness was the point that I was referring in the first previous point, that whenever they saw any discrepancies in the market, like if the or usually it happens in the terms of in times of a recession or economic downturn. So when the assets are being priced very cheaply, so they were very active at that point of time. And basically the author has told about the actions that all these great capital allocators, all the actions that these guys were taking at the time of what in US was from 1974 to 1982, where the equities were again because that was the time of recession which was going on in US. So there were a lot of mishappenings which are happening at that point of time. So there was this oil crisis, there was this some politics which was going on, and also that point of time the environment was not conducive for business to expand. So as a result of this, what was happening was that these assets, the equities and these and also the companies, they were being priced very cheaply. So most of these CEOs, they were either buying back their shares, or they were buying other businesses because the prices or the assets were being priced very cheaply. So that is what it means, that they were frugal, patience, occasional boldness, and they were also very selective in their acquisition. One of the key tenets that you will find is that they all detested dividends, or they used to avoid the dividends because they felt that dividends, instead of paying dividends to the shareholders, maybe they can either put that extra free cash flow back to the business, or maybe they can buy back they can buy back their own shares, or maybe they can buy the other businesses. So most of them, they avoided dividends, and as a result, many of them they were doing share repurchasing or share buybacks from the open market. And also one of the important things that you will see is that they were also prudently leveraging so that so they were not issuing equity to raise the capital, but then they were taking a debt, because the cost of capital for a debt is very less as compared to cost of equity. So cost of debt is very less as compared to cost of equity, and that is the reason they were prudently leveraging and issuing debt, and in turn what they were doing is they were ensuring that operations are being run very efficiently, so that cash flow from operations is consistent and it is growing year on year, and then they can quickly pay their debt and come out of it in 3 to 4 years or 5 years, or whatever the strategies they had. And then the last point, and I think one of the key commonalities that you will find across all these CEOs, that they never interacted much with the media press, and most important, they did not they did not give the earnings guidance, that how much the company is going to earn this year, or maybe next year, or maybe over a period of 3 years or 4 years. They did not believe in that, because that this is something, again, you are trying to predict the future, which is not possible. So rather than predicting the future, they were living more in the past and see what best they can do to enhance the value for their respective shareholders. And this is what is common across. So if you talk about Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger or Henry Singleton, so they never interacted with any of these this thing for the earnings guidance. So I think so guys, this was about all I had about the traits that these invest greatest capital allocators possess. So if you have any doubt, any comment, if you have anything that you have not understood or wanted to know more about capital allocation as an investment, you can just drop in a note, or you can comment in the comment section, and I'll be very happy to help you out. So that's all for today, folks. Thank you and have a nice day.